Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. A bill seeking to set up an institutional mechanism for surveillance, inspection, operation and maintenance of specified dams across the country was passed by the Lok Sabha on Friday, with the centre asserting it has no intention of taking over power of the states. The provisions of the bill is proposed to be applied to all specified dams in the country which have a height of more than 15 meters or between 10 to 15 meters. Among other things, the bill also seeks to resolve the interstate issues concerning maintenance and safety of dams. Around 92% of dams in the country are on interstate river basins. There are 5,745 reservoirs in the country, of which 293 are more than 100 years old. The age of 25% of the dams is between 50 to 100 years old and 80% are over 25 years old. 40 dams have collapsed in India since independence, and the worst such disaster occurred in Gujarat in 1979, leading to the loss of thousands of lives of people. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the Dam Safety Bill of 2019. Joining me on the program today are Professor C.K. Varshney, former Dean, School of Environmental Sciences, JNU; N.K. Mathur, former member, DNR, Central Water Commission; Sudhir Krishna, former Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development; and Chakshu Roy, Head of Outreach, PRS Legislative Research. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Chakshu Roy, I'd like to begin the program with you. Let's first talk about the important aspects of the Dam Safety Bill of 2019.
Frank, dams are critical infrastructure, and when you look at the statement and objects and reasons of the bill, one of the reasons given in the statement of objects and reasons is that since dams are critical infrastructure, their operational safety, their structural safety is extremely important because it impacts lives, it impacts ecology. What is the bill doing? The bill is doing three broad things. One, it is saying that dams above a specified height, I think 10 meters or above, will come within the purview of this bill, subject to additional structural requirements. Also dams, which are on interstate things. That's the first part. The second thing is it is putting together a regulator, right? It is going to be a national regulator which will then advise the government on different aspects of dam safety. In addition to the regulator, there are also other organizations at both the state and the central level that the bill is setting up, which will look at the safety of dams and the functioning of dams. And finally, what it is doing is, it is casting an obligation on dam operators on a number of parameters. Now, the idea is to somehow, cover the entire gamut of activities, both structural and otherwise, related to dams.
Right.
This is not, the 2019 bill is not the first bill. The 2018 bill, was introduced in the earlier Lok Sabha, but it lapsed because the bill could not be passed earlier. So the new bill has been, brought forward.
Right. So, N.K. Mathur, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. Why is there a need, or why was there a need to bring about this legislation in the first place?
Look, so far the entire dam safety gambit is based on the good sense of the dam owners, which normally is the state government. Nowadays, there are private players also coming into the picture, and there are some commercial interests like hydropower projects, etc. There, and we want that there should be a uniformity of procedures which is followed by all dam owners for a particular types of large dams. So this bill, as he says, it thrusts some responsibilities, some activities to be done by the dam owners, checked by state dam safety organizations, and the central regulator looking into it that everybody is doing his job. Central authority has got no role of direct action at any of the dams. They will be just giving some policy inputs and some guidelines, and see that these guidelines are being followed. If there is some technical input required by them in following that input will also be provided. So basically it makes the dam safety gambit in three tiers: dam owners, state regulator and central regulator.
Right. So basically you're talking about the central government is going to be more of a facilitator, and you're looking at more standardization as far as the entire process is concerned, so that it's all on the same page. So, Professor Varshney, let me bring you into the picture now. As far as dam safety is concerned, what are the challenges really as far as dam safety are concerned? What needs to be addressed at what footing?
I think there are a number of challenges. Some because of the age of the dams. Frank, as you have mentioned that we have got, we are the third largest dam owner country, and we have got about 5,256 and so dams as per the National Dam Register of 2018, and there are also which are under construction. So the question is that as the dams become old, their design, their hydrology and everything is not at par with the current thinking and the latest understanding and the practices. So that is issue number one. And secondly, that there are a large number of siltation and huge siltation is taking place. So that is a second issue where their water holding capacity got reduced. And third, and the most important part is that how these dams are to be regulated was entirely dependent upon individual dam managers. There was no systematization, there was no actually understanding in terms of the downstream water requirement or the kind of flows that are already there. So I think there was some kind of a difficulty, and we have seen that what has happened in Kerala. It is largely the opening of the gates which have created the problem and made it more complex. Similarly, we are finding this year in the Bihar, the gates have been opened which has really gushed water and messed the whole thing. So the question is that dam safety is important because we have got a major investment in these infrastructure. But at the same time, it is very important that dam safety is dependent upon many factors, and these factors have never been taken into account because the standard protocol that are being followed are of something where they have taken climate as a standard factor, but now they find that the climate is changing. So I think that many things new have come in which we have to think first the safety because there is a lot of investment, and secondly that there has been no I should say uniformity or understanding as to when and how the gates have to be opened, when not to be opened, and so on. And all these things are required to be taken very seriously because as the water becomes scarce and as the monsoon is changing because of the climate change, it has become absolutely essential to really think about these subjects very carefully and proactively. So I think this is just a mechanism which in no way takes away the authority of the state government, which is, you know, this water is a state subject. But at the same time, it provides the broad guidelines, and there is certain amount of to see that they are implemented and they are really followed and they are religiously taken care of. There are a certain amount of regulator both at the center as well as state, and their work and their activities are defined. One special aspect of this act is that so far the various contractors, designers, planners were there. Their professional efficiency was not of certain kind or actually has never been evaluated, but they were engaged. And that is the reason that we will find that many times design problems have arisen. And many of our dams today do have a design problem. So I think there is a now mechanism where accreditation of these people who are engaged and who are going to really take part in the construction and maintenance has to be taken care of, for which the state government or the state regulator will do the job. So I think these are some of the very new dimensions which have been added apart from the traditional thing of making it a very systematic, uniform and so on. One thing more I would like to say, when we talk of uniformity, I think we should also think that how much uniformity, because this country has different climate and different catchment areas. Does the uniformity has to be taken very seriously? So I think these committees we expect will take into account. So it can differ
from north to south, is what you're suggesting.
So these committees will become little more, I should say, open to these facts while they are formulating their details and working out the rules.
So it cannot be too rigid is also what you're suggesting.
It cannot be regimental. It can't be.
So Sudhir Krishna, let me come across to you now. So since we're talking about standardization, since we are talking about uniformity, you know, when we talk of dam safety, when you look at a dam, there are, you know, mega infra projects that we see across the country. When you're looking at projects as big as some of the dams that we look at. How important is it to have uniformity? How important is it to have standardization? And how important is it to prescribe to a set standard or a set standard to follow?
See, the dams are so important for the country's development in various ways: water, power, and for irrigation and drinking and so on. So, and it is high cost thing. At the same time, dams are also prone to damage, prone to breach, and therefore safety is very important, and accordingly safety standards are extremely important. And therefore a law, and also it is necessary to have national standards of dam safety. There is no, I don't think there will be any debate on that. But my anxiety is that, let's say, standards part is all right. The National Committee on Dam Safety should set the standard, that part is okay. But the governance structure about the dam safety, that is causing some anxiety. See, there is a Central Water Commission. The Central Water Commission is under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. The chairman of National Water Commission is ex officio chairman of the National Committee on Dam Safety. Now the Central Water Commission appraises all the dam projects. Almost all dam projects, whether by state government or by government of India, they come to Central Water Commission for techno-economic appraisal. Now the authority that has given the techno-economic clearance, now he has to sit over the audit of the same project for any failure. It is like being a judge of your own cause. So that doesn't seem to be a very logical framework. That is one part. Secondly, there is no need apparently of having a national dam safety authority for looking after 5,000 dams spread all over India in nook and corner of the country, in all places which are not easily accessible often. And this authority, headed by an additional secretary level officer, is supposed to be the inspector, like policing. And I'll read out a sentence from a clause from the Act. Section 8 subsection 4 says that the authority shall comply with such direction as may from time to time be given by the central government. So he becomes absolute agent of the central government, and as such there is nothing wrong, because after all central government is setting up an authority and it will have, but that authority to go into policing matter and his functions issue, there are a large number of functions assigned to him in a schedule. 32 functions given to the authority, and it goes to the extent of saying that it will give direction regarding qualification and experience requirement for individuals, give direction regarding maintenance of logbook and database, give direction regarding quality control measures,
right,
and it can disqualify the people who are notified earlier. It is like managing one dam, or a couple of dams. That kind of workload is there, and he has to manage 5,000 dams and look after so many states. So that is another anxiety which has to be resolved.
Sure.
And thirdly, there were already a National Committee on Dam Safety, which is there from last, I think, 32 years. It is there in existence, chaired by the same chairman of Central Water Commission. And that committee has as many as 18 states represented on it. Now this act, by its provision of the law itself, says that 7 states will be represented. Now in such a large country, where majority of the states have got dams which will fall in the purview of this act, now the only 7 number. So it is a matter, I am not going in terms of federalism and so on. That is a different thing. It is a practicality of governance.
Sure.
And if you don't involve the states and you have only 7 members, and which already there were 18. So I don't think, this doesn't fit in very well in the logic of things.
Right.
It is like a national highway government can manage, because notified as national highway, you have a different thing. Railways, central government can manage. There is a central subject. But water, which is a state subject, of course, there is an influence of list 1 also. Interstate rivers are in the central subject,
sure.
all right.
Right.
But
so
essentially,
let me take the points that you're making to
NK
Mathur and see what he has to say about this, because you're saying the practicality at the end of the day, it might not be feasible for for the authority to look into all these nitty-gritties, is what you're suggesting, NK Mathur.
Yeah, first thing I want to say that all these mechanisms which have been provided in the bill are existing. NCDS is existing. for last around 30-40 years. 87 or 88 NCDS was constituted. In the similar way, Central Dam Safety Organization is also part of Central Water Commission. The role of Central Water Commission or Central Dam Safety Organization or NCDS is not action oriented, it is prescription oriented. Chairman Central Water Commission has been chairing NCDS for long, and Central Water Commission does not own, operate or derive benefit out of any dam anywhere in the country. Therefore, there is no question of clash of interest. In fact, what my learned friend has said, that we are part of the appraisal system and design procedures, it helps us in giving the technical input required for dam safety organization. In fact, dam safety organization has got its benefit out of this experience which we gain while planning and designing the water resources structures, and also we have already laid down so many guidelines. This National Dam Safety Authority which is planned is being actually upgradation of Central Dam Safety Organization, which is already the part of Central Water Commission, and the directives which are planned, these are not some policing directives, they are just this type of directives. Look, you have not done the pre-monsoon inspection, kindly do the pre-monsoon inspection. Look, your pre-monsoon inspection is showing that your gallery is not clean, please clean the gallery. And so those things are just to be
Tick marking the checklist, basically.
Tick marking the checklist or giving them good advice,
Right.
or only those type of directives are there. There is no directive that you open the gate right now, but we have to put the operation manual in place. If the state government does not have an operational manual in place, then we will say that please make the operational manual immediately.
Sure.
Once the operation manual is there, ultimately state has to do it.
Right.
We don't give them direction that you open the gate.
So it's more of hand holding is what you're
It's more of
suggesting, and
hand-holding,
the
yes.
state has to do the work at the end of the day, right? So Chakshu, since we are talking about the National Dam Safety Authority, let's try and understand now what the functions of the authority will be.
Okay. Frank, Sudhir sir was mentioning something about, that the earlier or the existing organization before the dam safety bill comes in has representation of 18 states. He's right. The bill is specifying that in that central, regulatory authority that is being created, there will be representation of 7 states by rotation, right? So, the idea being that hopefully when the committee gets reconstituted after a defined period of time, the next set of 7 states will come in and start. Okay. In my opening remarks, I talked about as to what is the kind of, if we visualize what is the kind of structure that is being set up under this bill, there is a top layer of a regulatory, recommending structure that is being set up, which will be set up on the recommendation, which will have recommendations, from the central government, because it will have, 10 people on it. It will have state representation because 7 states will be represented, and there will be 3 dam safety experts. Now, this is more of a prescriptive organization which will, give its inputs. Then there is 2 layers of operational, organizations. So one is the National Dam Safety Authority, and then the State Dam Safety Authority. The job of the National Dam Safety Authority will be, one, to resolve conflicts when it occurs between the State Dam Safety Authority and possibly a dam operator, because that might happen. The other function it would be that there are certain kinds of dams which the National Dam Safety Authority would be overseeing, right? So, for example, if a state has a dam which it is operating in another state, I think Tamil Nadu has couple of those.
I think Bakranangal also is one of them.
Yeah. So in those cases, the National Dam Safety Authority will actually be the will function as a state dam safety authority. Now, the other part would be as to whatever recommendations are coming, from that regulatory authority, the National Dam Safety Authority will then ensure that those regulations are actually being implemented across. So its job will be much more of a diligence or due diligence kind of an organization. I think there are 2 or 3 things that we should, be cognizant of. Obviously, Sudhir sir was pointing out as to the large number of dams. Sir was pointing about if there are large number of dams, climatic variations across the country, soil conditions, river conditions, those vary. An important aspect would be also the preventive mechanisms.
Right.
Because till the time everything's working well, it's all good. But if a dam fails, no amount of penal punishment or no amount of punishment can then compensate for the loss of lives.
Certainly.
So what will be the mechanisms to ensure that whatever regulation is being pushed through is complied with will become equally important.
So since we are here, Professor, and since we all know that our dams are getting older, many of them over close to around 300 or over 100 years old, what more needs to be done as far as safety is concerned?
You see, first of all, we have to understand that what are those factors which really affect the safety. Number one is the landscape. Number two is land use change. And number three is the pattern of rainfall. And the fourth is the structural features and the age of the structure. Now, these are the 4-5 factors which really are responsible for designing and really scaling the vulnerability of a dam. Now, since we have got a large number of dams which were designed and which were constructed back in time, and today the design parameters have completely changed, the considerations have changed, and therefore their vulnerability level is very high. Secondly, because of the change in the climate and because of the rapid changes that is taking place in land use, the amount of yield that is going to come to the dam has drastically increased or is going to be variable. Now, these factors in a standard procedure have never been taken into account, not only in India, even world over. And these are the new features which need to be taken into account in dam safety, and these factors become very, very important where we have got dams which have got age as a factor, because these are already having some kind of hydrological shortcomings as well as the design shortcoming, and finally they also have the age effect on them. So all these things put together, over and above the increased siltation, which really reduces the capacity of the dam, and there is hardly any dam in the country where the design criteria has not been breached by the amount of silt that is being deposited. So these are the real factors which perhaps the committee and the others will take into account. Only one thing I would like to say, that since the dam safety is a responsibility of many external factors, and therefore the environmentalist and the environmental angle in this need to be put. If you have an expert of dam safety, then I think many of these environmental issues are going to be sidetracked. I wish that some of these things with experience, because after all it has been just introduced, over a period of time they will do that. And not only they will do that, it has become almost a necessity to do that.
Sure.
Otherwise it is going to be a very critical point in terms of dam safety of the upstream as well as the downstream of the dam and dam itself.
Right. So, Sudhir Krishna, as far as water being a state subject, we've raised that quite a bit on this particular program as well. At some point in time, do you see the states having a problem as far as this bill is concerned?
Well, actually, I think that first of all, an impression is coming that there were nothing as far as dam safety issues are concerned. There were no standards, no mechanism. I don't think it is true. I mean, the Central Water Commission was working very hard, very sincerely, and in a federal setup along with the state, things were working. But a paradigm change has come in many systems, many structures, and in the states, that the regular inspection systems are decaying. The regular inspection and supervision systems are decaying, and there is now that is supposed to be replaced by line function replaced by a staff function. A staff organization like authority, commission, these are replacing the line departments. And it has come to the stage that in the State Committee on Dam Safety, it is chaired by the engineer-in-chief in charge of dam safety. Now that engineer-in-chief is normally not the senior most irrigation engineer in the state. He is like number 2 or number 3 in hierarchy. So there is a principal secretary or there is a chief engineer-in-chief for irrigation and so on. So now how this, hierarchy system is being matched with a staff function, a committee and so on. I think the right arrangement would be to strengthen the state irrigation department, and the Central Water Commission has to be strengthened in the framework that it is working now, that has to be strengthened further. The National Committee on Dam Safety, which is already there, it seems to be doing fairly well, but needs to be augmented. But the statutory element is not so much required for inspection by central government. The inspection, etc., all must be by state government. Manuals, the model manuals which the Central Water Commission brings out, the Bureau of Indian Standards. In fact, incidentally, the Bureau of Indian Standards has got a sectional committee on the standards for dam safety, etc., and the chaired by the Central Water Commission chairman chairs that committee himself. And therefore, there is a very fine setup which is not having this baton of central statute with central authority, National Dam Safety Authority and so on. I mean, it's very, very discomforting because I worked in the state and I was Principal Secretary PWD in the state of Karnataka, and so there is a state government has got a system and that must be strengthened. There may be weakness here and there. That weakness here and there in the state should not mean that we should replace the whole thing by a central law. It is like if municipalities here and there are not working, and we have nearly 5,000 municipalities. Should we have a central chief commissioner of municipalities who will look after all the 5,000 municipalities? I mean, National Municipal Authority. I mean, it doesn't work out that way. And so I think we have to nurture the states, we have to guide the states, and this law is not merely to guide. I am sorry, it is not the impression only to handhold. It is a law to give direction to states. And in turn, the authority which gives direction will be given direction by the Ministry of Jal Shakti. He has to comply with that direction, and his directions, he will pass on direction to the states. So it's very discomforting in governance framework. Again, I am saying, I am not digressing into emotional part of center-state relations and so on. That it's a different issue we can discuss separately.
Absolutely,
Here,
yes.
purely administrative and governance arrangements, it is not at all a workable system. And I think we have to rather focus on strengthening the Central Water Commission.
Right, sure.
And whatever weaknesses are there should be worked out. Yes, standardization part I say, standardization, preparation of manual, all must be recommendatory to state. It should not be that the National Dam Safety Authority shall direct the state, and if they don't direct, he will give a fine, and all those things. I don't think it is a good governance for developmental activities. Developmental framework, irrigation, infrastructure is a developmental activity. It should
Certainly,
not be
right.
subjected to a police-like framework. That's
Right.
That's my
Okay.
view.
One quick closing comment from you, N.K. Mathur, on the best way forward as far as dam safety is concerned.
This is a very small step which has been taken in a legislative framework. I think the legislative framework will evolve with time. The various systems were already in the place. We had got a Central Dam Safety Organization, National Dam Safety Committee, State Dam Safety Organizations also. In around 20 states, we could, just by persuasion, we could form the State Dam Safety Organization in 20 states. And there were manuals, guidelines, which we have prepared ourselves. And we have been doing the handholding for preparation of emergency action plans, etc., with the dam owners, sitting with them together. Only problem was that whenever there was a problem, people immediately used to ask, where is the operation manual of this dam, which has failed or which has been operated wrongly. And we found that operation manual was not there.
Right.
Then they said, what are you doing?
Right.
We said we sent them operation manuals draft. We told them that you fill in the blanks. We told them that you adopt it, and we told them that you operate it.
Sure.
But our their priorities are there, and our priorities are ours. So the thing did not come up.
Right.
Now it is just giving some legislative push to those good senses which were already prevailing.
Right. All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.